Hey, good morning. My name is Kyle King with xarvio Field Manager. Glad y'all could come in. For those that want to come sit, there's plenty of seats here. Hey, over the next few minutes, really what I want to accomplish with you is really start to understand from an agronomic modeling perspective when it comes to really what we're working on within BASF and xarvio Field Manager. How are we using the R&D data and the models that we've developed over our last 25 years to really enable, ag retail and really these agronomic recommendations. And so, who is xarvio Field Manager? For those of you who don't know, really digital ag platform focused at the ag retail level. One thing in my career, my past experience has been how do we enable and really proactively bring agronomic insights and recommendations to ag retail as you partner with your customers. Versus flip side, right? It's really around being proactive versus reactive. And so our focus is in empowering and tool you with data and information. I think you've heard over the last day or two that you've been here, there's a ton of data, in agriculture. And it's really been a challenge of how do you take all this data to bring it forward from a value add and a recommendation standpoint. And at the end of the day, that's our core goal, is partner with the local agronomist who's really driving those relationships and those recommendations with their customers. And so even though we're owned by BASF, we are brand agnostic. We want to bring you the information, the insights, as well as, how do you start to plan and prioritize fields, but really leave the core recommendation on what's the right product and product rates based on those what you're seeing and what you're experiencing locally. We know there's unique decisions being made, and so we want to make sure we empower you with those. So that's really our core goal. So partner with you retail folks that really lead with agronomy and bring these agronomic models and recommendations to you to really ground truth and dive into. So what have we done? Really, we've been developing these tools and working with models globally for over 25 years. And from a market standpoint, we've got over 200 models that we've developed, with over 75 of those commercialized. And really for what we're going to talk about today, I'm primarily going to focus on seed placement as well as disease modeling or crop health modeling, excuse me. And so from a soybean placement, obviously in our experience around seed placement, there could be a lot of variability, right? And what we are trying to do and what we want to accomplish is clearly understand the environment that those products are going into. So how do we now start to characterize each field individually and to understand high performing or high capacity soil geographies to where they're more stressed, right? And so if you start thinking about how those stress start to affect soybeans and the plant structure, and so it really comes down to how do we characterize the field by environment and start using key characters. I don't know why this build did not follow through, team. Sorry, but there should be a build looking at soil structure, elevation, slope, starting to understand how does water flow, what's that plant available water, and understand those key stresses, right? So then what we've done through BASF R&D is start to understand each of those varieties and be thinking about where have they been placed. We think about the characterization that you saw within those fields, so we understand kind of that stress mechanism, and then we have a ton of data. How does that plant then react, right? How does that variety react when it's put under stress, right? And so then we really start to characterize. Once we characterize the environment, we understand how to put the right tool in place to maximize that opportunity. The core goal is when a plant gets under stress, what happens to it, right? So if you start thinking about plant structure, how does that start to reduce yield or abort pods, whatever that may be? And so it's really a combination of varietal placement as well as density. And what you see here, once you make a selection of a soybean variety, we also produce a variable rate script, right? Really based on that varietal placement and density, understanding the stresses that are in that environment. An analogy I use, folks, is track and field, right? How many sprinters do you run long distance? How many long distance do you run sprinters? And so we're trying to understand the race that field is put under to make sure we put the right runner in the race to give you the best opportunity. And when high stress does happen, that we don't see it really fall off as much as what it could be. And I'll go through some metrics of what we see from a data perspective by making sure we get the right variety at the right field, at the right rate, at the right time. The other thing we're going to talk about really is around diseases and really crop health management. And so we're modeling out biotic stress as well as abiotic stress. And from a North American perspective, really the three core crops we're looking at is corn and soy here for the U.S. and canola for the U.S. We're continuing to expand crops and expand our disease structure within those crops. But for today, from a soybean perspective in the U.S., we're looking at frog eye, septoria, brown spot, and target spot. And for corn, it's gray leaf spot, tar spot, and northern corn leaf blight. And then as we move north and into the canola market, it's really around sclerotinia root rot. And then as you look at environmental stress, as that can start to really compound plant health, we're looking at drought, heat, and light, right? And so as you start thinking about how this starts to interact, and from really what you would start to see, try to make it super simple, right? As we're starting to model out at the field level, really these risks from a disease and an abiotic stress standpoint, try to keep it simple. Red, yellow, green. Green's good, just like stoplights, right? Green's go, yellow's caution, red is stop, you got an action. So not only is it around tooling you and helping you plan and prioritize, fields at greatest risk, and how does that really start to change the conversation you're having with your customers? Because I know as you're trying to manage hundreds of fields and multiple relationships with customers, you can only see and manage so many fields in a day. So how do we take the masses down to a prioritized number to where as you start thinking about resource allocation, where am I going to go look, who's the customers I'm going to go talk to, and most importantly, if you start to put together a recommendation, you're driving down that driveway probably with a solution that the farmer didn't even know they needed yet, right? And so how do we give that to you in a very tangible way? But then last but not least, it's really around what's the timing. Sometimes the pulling the trigger and deciding when to make the application can be difficult. And so providing really tangible information to where you can come with a recommendation and give you that optimal window to make a fungicide application to really mitigate stress as much as possible. We're really heavily focused on that preventative state, right? And obviously there's always going to be a curative, but if we can be on the front side of stress, I think we can all probably agree that if you mitigate stress, you increase your bushel opportunities, right? And if we can keep bushels on the plant versus, letting Mother Nature and other things deduct that from our potential, that's our ultimate goal. And back to the brand agnostic, there's things going on here that we want to empower the retail to make that final decision on what's the right product mix. There may be some other plant health characteristics products that you have in your lineup that you'd want to put in the tank mix. There may be some insecticide while you're going over that you want to put. So that's why we keep it, give you the information, give you the recommendation as far as timing and fields, but allow you to finalize the recommendation from a product perspective. And so what are we seeing from a response? Obviously you look at really fungicide response across the multitude of crops. We typically see a lift, right? And it depends on the crop. You can probably, see data from, 5 to 8 bushel response. But what we see, if you really move that preventative timing, you move that application up, especially with the fungicide market today having a longer life of protection period, depends on the product. We actually see in our early indications, you're seeing north of that average, right? And obviously the bell curve runs up to about 30 bushel response in some cases. We've seen responses that high, but I'm not going to sit here and say you're going to see a 30 bushel response, but in many cases we see something north of the average of that 5 to 8 bushel, and it's really purely on timing from an application perspective. From a soy placement perspective, just getting the right variety and the right acre, you could see definitely a 3 to 5 bushel yield lift, just purely on placement. Now you start to bring in, understanding that stress and getting the right density in play. And so that way when the variety needs to run, it can run, and when it needs to go into defensive mode, it mitigates that downside risk. We see some strong responses just really on varietal placement and density and timing when we think about variable rate seeding. So we'll be here in booth 215. If you have any questions, we'd love to walk you through a demo, and if you want to see kind of how this starts to work and look within our system. So thank you.